Ah, very interesting. So, yeah, I must ask you a little bit about your NASCAR career. Uh, how did you get your ride in the 80 car for, I think it was a satellite team of like Joe Gibbs Racing, wasn't it?
So what I did was I was racing midgets and sprint cars, doing some Trans Am stuff, and I wanted to go NASCAR racing. Wasn't getting anywhere on the IndyCar side. It was just it had become a lot about how much you just had to be able to raise a lot of money, and the target was beyond what I could do. So I did some ARCA racing first. I built a car with a friend of mine in his garage down here in Mooresville. I didn't even live down here yet. And we went to Talladega for an ARCA race against a lot of the NASCAR development teams. Finished second. Andy Petrie's development car with my friend Paul Menard won the race. I made a run at him at the end and just couldn't quite get by, so I finished behind him. We did lead for a while, ran up front all day. And from there, I got an opportunity to do. I did another ARCA race at Chicago that we also almost won. I think I finished fourth because of a late pit stop. But then the Stan Hoover had the 80 car, and I had bought a road course car from Andy Petrie at an auction, and for I think $10,000. And I went through it, and with some friends, we kind of made it legal and fit the templates, and had some friends that worked at different teams like Hendricks and such, and they kind of helped me get through tech and so on with it. And then my friend at the time was Pro Motor Engines, was owned by Peter Guile. He hooked me up with an engine, and we went up there just to see how we could do. And we didn't test. I didn't sit in that thing before we rolled it, out for practice up there. And my only experience, of course, in the stock cars were at Talladega and Chicagoland and ARCA cars, other than some testing I'd done, obviously, but never raced. And so we went there, and we had a really good car. That was in the pre-COT days. That was in 2004. So I really liked those cars, and you can really throw them around a lot more than you can the COT cars of today. And we were sort of top 4, top 8 in the practices, but qualifying got rained out, which is an interesting part of that story. The main reason I had done a deal with Stan Hoover was he had provisional points. And if I had gone up there just with my own car, that Denny Lamers, who was helping me with paying for it at the time, as was David Jans, they wanted me to run number 66 because it was kind of the number that I ran for Denny and other cars. But I said, listen, we should run 80. I can make a deal with Stan Hoover. He gets the points for our race, but at the same time, if it rains, we get in. So that all worked out. It did rain. So we got in. And unfortunately, we took what could have been a very good day for us. I think back then it was not unheard of, and we were certainly going fast enough to end up with sort of a 8th through 12th place sort of finish, which could be done on road courses by ringers in those days. Unfortunately, the guys made a decision to have a little too much tape on the car at the start. And we had too long of a green flag run to come and take the tape off, and it blew the water out of it. So we had to go back to the garage area, lost a bunch of laps, putting water back in it. Then we went out though and finished the race and got my laps in. But again, it was a great, it was a great experience to do that on our own like that the first time. You almost can't do that now. It's gotten so much more technical in terms of what it even takes to get through tech compared to back then. You just had sort of, it was involved, but you could work your way through it with the handheld templates and such. Now with the scanning and everything, you just can't even think about doing that like that on that kind of a cheap deal. Like I say, we took a $10,000 car and a borrowed engine, and my friend Tex Powell gave me a transmission to use, and we went up there and we did the race. It was a lot of fun.
That's pretty interesting. You still had fun in that car, and yeah, that's really interesting. So it was the aerodynamics of the too much tape that cost you a potential top 10.
Yeah, they just put a little bit too much tape on the front of it, and I wanted to. We discussed as I was running around. It was very early in the race. Whether or not we should pit. And that was before we ran the pressure tanks like they do now, where you can run really high temperatures and it'll keep the water in it. We didn't have any of that back then. And they felt we were going to be good for 3 or 4 more laps, and we just weren't. We just pushed the water out, so I had to come in, and we lost some laps. But it was funny. We that was when Tex had just done a new single rail transmission, they were called, and I had been involved in testing them for them in some other vehicles. So they gave me one for the race. And Jimmy Johnson also had one. Jeff Gordon, the Hendrick guys had one, and those guys broke theirs. And I ran the whole race with mine. And I was joking around with Mike Powell, Tex's son, afterwards that we beat the Hendricks guys with it. But then, of course, that's when he had to tell me, yeah, unfortunately, they had the same one you did, but they broke it. So
Yeah, that's really interesting.